Okay, folks, we are, well, I should say we are back. We're not really back. I had some technical difficulties there. I had a couple calls I had to take and it totally ruined everything. So, this is what we're up against, folks. Joe Biden, your president, well, I don't know if he's necessarily your president or not. I don't know who is on it, who didn't vote for him. But this guy, I mean, I didn't think anybody could destroy an awesome economy and an awesome world power as quickly as this clown has done. So, reading the title, what you may see in there is Biden essentially arms Iran with American weapons. He did this. We're going to get to that. He did it inadvertently, but he still did it. And he's probably done it more than once. Inadvertently, but he still did it. Also, and he also had the gall to say that MAGA Republicans want to defund the police. Never heard a MAGA Republican say that, Joe, but okay. The other thing we're going to get at here is this new tax plan. There's a run on Silicon Valley banks. They essentially had to be shut down. The FDIC had to bail them out. This is what starts a recession, folks. And perhaps the run on the banks isn't necessarily just because of Joe Biden's tax plan. It was possibly happening to begin with. Silicon Valley's a bunch of tech people, and everybody knows what happens with FTX. But the whole Russia-Ukraine thing is a little bit different. You see, the Russia-Ukraine thing has been a problem. I have always been a person that it's always about hold on, I'm trying to pull this up. It's always been about my policy has always been about, I guess, leave and let alone. It might have been laissez-faire, whatever it was. Don't get into a fight that's not yours, essentially. Like, just don't do it. It doesn't do any good. It might piss other people off. Now, granted, Vladimir Putin is a crazy asshole. He is. That is not news. But this whole war, you know, a lot of people say, Trump, nothing would have changed. Well, and guess what? Putin, during the Trump administration, Putin didn't try a damn thing. Not one. He didn't try anything on Ukraine. Nothing like that, because he was scared of Trump, because he respected Trump. Ditto with President Xi in China. However, the Democrats and their mask-wearing, Ukraine flag having on their social media posts, I mean, that's how you know someone's a Democrat right off. If they're wearing a mask on a selfie and then they have a Ukraine flag pin, you know for a fact they're a Democrat. Because, you know, truth be told, and a lot of Republicans support Ukraine too. I am not against Ukraine. However, I am against giving them weapons, because what's going to happen? Even cackling Kamala Harris, the worst vice president in the history of this country. You know, I love yellow school. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus? Oh my God, the craters on the moon. You're going to see these craters. They're going to be so great. Kamala Harris even said in layman's terms, folks, well, Ukraine is a country in Europe, and Russia is a much bigger country in Europe. And Russia is trying to take over parts of Ukraine. And basically, that's wrong. Right there, folks. Russia is a much bigger country in Europe, which means Russia has a much bigger army. So Joe Biden goes giving these Ukrainians, American weapons. And aside from which, he gives the Ukrainians American weapons, right? The Ukrainians use them against Russia, further pissing off Putin, by the way. What do you think? Okay, naturally, Russia, a much bigger country, is going to eventually overtake the much smaller country. And even if they didn't, they would do the same thing they did when the Nazis tried to take it in World War II. They would retreat up north in the winter, although maybe Ukrainians could have learned from the Nazis' mistakes. They would retreat north in the winter, the Ukrainians would freeze their asses to death, and the Russians would still take the weapons. Then they get the secrets of our weapons. Mind you, a lot of their stuff is as good as ours, if not better, especially their airplanes and probably their tanks. So you have this outcome going. So the Russians apparently got a hold of, and I have the news right here, Russians apparently got a hold of, well, lo and behold, some American weapons. Is this a surprise? And this I'm about to read you, folks, is from CNN, which is hardly considered conservative media. Headline: Russia has been sending some U.S.-provided weapons captured in Ukraine to Iran. Russia has been capturing some of the U.S. and NATO-provided weapons and equipment left on the Russian battlefield in Ukraine and sending them to Iran, where the U.S. believes Tehran will try to reverse engineer the systems. Four sources familiar with the matter told CNN. By the way, this is CNN, folks, not Fox News. Over the last year, U.S., NATO, and other Western officials, namely the U.S., I'm throwing that in there, have seen several instances of Russian forces seizing smaller, shoulder-fired weapons and equipment, including Javelin anti-tank and Stinger anti-aircraft systems that Ukrainian forces have at times been forced to leave behind on the battlefield, sources had told CNN. In many of those cases, Russia has then flown the equipment back to Iran to dismantle and analyze, likely so the Iranian military can attempt to make their own version of the weapon, sources said. Russia believes that continuing to provide captured Western weapons to Iran will incentivize Tehran to maintain its support for Russia's war in Ukraine, sources said. U.S. officials don't believe the issue is widespread or systematic, and the Ukrainian military has made it a habit since the beginning of the war to report to Pentagon any losses of U.S.-provided equipment to Russian forces, officials said. Still, U.S. officials acknowledge that the issue is difficult to track. It is not clear if Iran has successfully reverse-engineered any of these weapons taken in Ukraine, but Tehran has proven highly adept at developing weapon systems based on U.S. equipment seized in the past. Like, I don't know, the last time Biden screwed up by leaving a bunch of, not just people, but $80 billion in weaponry behind in Ukraine? Not Ukraine, Afghanistan. Which made its way to China and Russia. So basically, under the 2 years, just over 2 years of Biden being in office, the essential new axis of evil, China, Russia, and Iran, now has all the American weapons secrets. Furthermore, I've seen other things that China is developing their own equivalent to the F-22 Raptor, which is probably going to be better. Remember, the F-22 came out in, 2002? It's a 30-year-old, 20-year-old airplane. I swear, folks, you can't make this stuff up. Donald Trump would have never allowed this to happen. Never. Not in a million years would Donald Trump have allowed this. How can you tell me you now have weapons that the United States sent to Ukraine, captured by Russia, sent to Iran so that they can build their own versions of it, and again, probably make them better. They can see the faults and this, that, and the other thing. And who do you think they're going to send? Well, they're going to keep some of them for themselves. But they're going to share the secrets with China and Russia. And you're going to have this big superpower over there who really don't care if their people get killed. Life is priceless in those countries. We care we would like to think we care if our people get killed. I mean, you look at some of the previous administrations, and they don't care about pointing their finger at a man and saying, go get killed. But even still, it's just, never would have happened under Donald Trump. There never would have been this pull out of Afghanistan, leaving all this stuff behind, which, again, as I just said, a lot of that went to Russia and China. Just give them the weapons to take over us and divide us if you want. And by the way, there's rumors going around in the news that Ron DeSantis has raised like $100 million for a Florida military. I don't know what that means, but I got an idea, and I'm not necessarily against it. I'm just going to say that, folks, because we may need it. But anyhow, moving on to the next topic, because if that wasn't scary enough, we have here, I don't know if you all have heard the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. This is also from CNN, not necessarily a right-wing institution, quite the opposite. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed Friday morning after a stunning 48 hours in which a bank run in a capital crisis led to the second largest failure of a financial institution in U.S. history. California regulators closed down the tech lender and put it under control of the U.S. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC. The FDIC is acting as a receiver, which typically means it will liquidate the bank's asset to pay back its customers, including deposits and creditors. Now, insert from CNN here, which they're not going to put in because they don't want to diss the Biden administration. Yeah, we got some chugs in here. They don't want to diss the Biden administration, but basically, this happened in 2008 under George W. Bush. I said W, not W, because I never liked the guy. You had that. There was a couple banks, you had a problem, and then boom, it caused a recession. And even that, though, it sucked for a lot of people, but most of us were able to dig ourselves out unless we bought houses that we could have never afforded anyway, in which case that's called, there's a reason I don't like to use a credit card. I never buy anything I can't afford because I don't want to, for example, this beer, I want to drink it and not have to pay for it afterwards, Even when I'm at a bar, I pay drink by drink. That's an analogy that I'm going to give on that. But a lot of people don't think that way, especially nowadays when Americans have to pay for everything on a credit card because everything is 15% higher on average than it was 4 years ago. For example, a 24-pack of these Coors Lights, regular price, at Publix in Miami, Florida, in the year 2020 was $20.99. Maybe it was $21.99. It is currently $26.49. That is a roughly 20% increase. So that is a 20% increase just over 2 years. But don't blame me. I voted for Trump. So anyhow, back to the Silicon Valley thing here. So the Silicon Valley Bank collapses, and the bank previously owned by SVP Financial did threat. So what happened here? CNN, by the way, I'm reading verbatim from CNN. The wheels started to come off Wednesday when SBV announced that it sold a bunch of securities at a loss and that it would sell $2.25 billion in new shares to shore up its balance sheet. Now, anybody that knows that 2 + 2 = 4 realize this isn't going to work. And naturally, I'm throwing some stuff in here, that triggered a panic among key venture capital firms who reportedly advised companies to withdraw their money from the bank. Company's stock cratered Thursday, dragging other banks down with it. By Friday morning, SBV shares were halted, and it had abandoned efforts to quickly raise capital or find a buyer. Several other bank stocks were temporarily halted Friday, including First Republic, PacWest Bancorp, and Signature Bank. Thankfully, I don't invest in any of those. The mid-morning timing of FDIC's takeover was noteworthy, as the agency typically waits until the market is closed to intervene. It is noteworthy, and it is a problem. Skipping a bit here, when interest rates were near zero, banks loaded up on long-dated, seemingly low-risk treasuries. But as the Fed raised interest rates to fight inflation, this is where the Fed is stupid. Again, Democrats will tell you 2 + 2 = 5. It never does. The value of those assets has fallen big time, leaving banks sitting on unrealized losses. And this is going to segue into the next thing I'm going to get to. Higher rates have also lowered the value of their treasury and other securities which SVB needed to pay depositors. All of this set off the run on their deposits and forced the FDIC to take over SVB. They're giving you a lot of this jargon here, which the average person is just going to read and be like, And even, if I didn't know the 2 plus 2 didn't equal 5, I would kind of be in the same boat. Essentially, what this is in layman's terms, and again, we're going to go into this, but let's say, I'm a bank. Let's say I'm a bank, right? And I'm loaning you money, okay? Interest you have to pay me, correct? So I loan you money at an interest rate of 0.05%, which I don't know if that's what it was, but they were near zero, so it said. 5 years ago. And now, because the Fed keeps thinking the way to fight inflation is to reduce interest rates, which doesn't work because of inflation, people are borrowing money from the bank, and at higher rates, they got to pay all that more money back, which, yes, it does help the bank, but guess what? People that don't have to aren't going to do that. So now, with interest rates in the, 5s, 4s, people are like, well, the banks aren't making any money on anything. They're losing money. And then when everybody goes and pulls it out, they have no money to give out to lend. So then the FDIC has to, and this is one thing that people need to understand. You can have $100,000 in the bank, but good luck trying to pull it all out at one time. They ain't going to have it on hand. All they have to have by law is a percentage of your money to be readily available. In essence, this is why the United States wants to go to a digital currency, because they spend money like crazy, more than they can print it. The more they print, the less it's worth. This is the Democrats, folks, not the conservatives. And therefore, people, when they find out that, wait a minute, this isn't going to be worth anything, and they want their money back, and then all of a sudden they can't get it, or a certain amount of people run on the banks, they take it all out. The bank no longer has the money to give you because it's spent it somewhere else, paying their employees, this, that, and the other thing. This is how a depression starts. The only reason that we have currently under this administration haven't had a depression yet is because people have faith in the banks. And that's why they want to go to a digital currency. But if you say, no, I want the cash, it's not there because Biden's sending it overseas and he's sending it to Ukraine and he's doing this, that, and the other thing. When that's just a part of it, though. That's not the whole thing. We can't blame everything on Crypt Keeper Joe, although we can blame 90% of it on the Democrats. That's for damn sure. So, being that in and of itself, so you had the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, bailed out by the FDIC, and hopefully there isn't anything else along this stature that comes out. Now, the CNN article also goes echoes of 2008, which, this is the good thing about this, though, because out of everything horrible, something good, we would like to think something good has to happen, right? I mean, it can't all be bad now, can it? Well, there is a good thing. See, 2008, who was president in 2008? Oh, yeah, George W. Bush. John McCain didn't stand a shot at winning in 2008. Primarily because of his dumbass running mate, Sarah Palin. Who could see Russia for our house and had a Down syndrome, baby? So, it's 2008 collapse. It says echoes of 2008. This is the same thing from CNN Business. Despite the initial panic on Wall Street during the run of SVB, which caused its shares to crater, analysts said the bank's collapse is unlikely to have the kind of domino effect that gripped the banking industry during the financial crisis. System is well capitalized. System is well capitalized and liquid as it has ever been, said Zande. The banks are now in trouble are much too small to be a meaningful threat to the broader system. But smaller banks are disappropriately tied to cash-strapped industries like tech and crypto, or might be in for a rough ride. Everyone on Wall Street knew the Fed's rate hiking campaign would eventually break something, and right now it's taking down small banks. Well, it's not necessarily a small bank. They have like $25 billion in assets. It's not tiny. Now, let's go and, see how everything is working here. They don't want you to think that anything under Joe, this is CNN. This is why we're breaking it down in a different way. That anything that Joe Biden's administration does is anything bad. They don't want you to believe that. But it could very well be. It could be something very detrimental to our society and way of life. I mean, all of you watching this program right now are paying at least 10% more today for items that you were buying in 2000, let's even say 2020. Let's be real. It's simple math. You can look at your 401k, look at your retirement plan, look at everything. Look at the price. Look at the price of gas, for example. Look at the price of gas. That's the easiest way to monitor it. Donald Trump didn't do that. In fact, if Donald Trump had his way, gas would be cheaper today than it was at this time in 2020, which was actually, it was before even the pandemic even hit. But don't blame me. I voted for Trump. So anyhow, Joe Biden, the crypt keeper in chief, the demented in chief, the dumbass in chief, with the vice cackler. I can go on with many other names for comment. Crypt keeper in chief and the vice cackler. I guess that would be appropriate for that one. Joe Biden's new economic plan. Now we're going to get into this. First off, it's horrible. They want to charge you. Now it's not going to pass. Thank God we have a Republican Congress, at least in the House. It's not going to pass by a long shot because there's just no way it can. But so Joe Biden wants to charge people. He wants to increase a bunch of tax hikes. Number one, higher than they've been in decades. But the one that he wants to levy on you, which I would advise people this time, if you don't have stocks, and don't inhale cigars, by the way, that was a mistake. If you don't have stocks, don't buy any. I mean, because if the Democrats manage to weasel their way into power in 2024, this might come to fruition. Joe Biden's tax plan wants, are you ready for this? Or his budget wants to tax people on unrealized capital gains. Now, unrealized capital gains, for those of you living in Rio Linda, are gains. It's basically taxing you on money you never made. So let's say, and Sean Hannity gave a perfect example of this, so I'm going to use his example. Let's say you buy McDonald's stock at $500 a share, okay? And it gets as high as $1,000 a share. But you don't sell it at $1,000 a share. And then it drops down to $600 a share, and you sell it at $600 a share. You made $100 a share. So you have to pay capital gains on that. But because it got as high as $1,000 a share, you have to pay the tax on $500 a share gain. Even though you didn't make that money because you didn't sell it that money, Biden wants you to pay it. That's how he figures he's going to fix his student loan debt. And he figures, well, only the rich own stocks, and it's not going to hurt them. But, well, you know what? Some of the small Joes own stocks too. People that are in 401ks, people that are in money market. A lot of retirement plans have you in stocks. That's how you increase your wealth. You work your ass off for it, and then you get a tax bill. Wait a minute, I never made this money, but you have to pay the tax on it. Thankfully, folks, Joe Biden is only the retard in chief. And now, this would be different if the Republicans didn't take the House. And I believe right now we might even technically have control of the Senate because Festerman is in the hospital, I believe, still for clinical depression. His family should be arrested for abuse because he should have never even been able to run after he had that stroke. He's been in the hospital more than he's been in the damn Congress since he's been elected or inaugurated, I should say. And then you have another Democrat senator that I believe is out, so that kind of changes the balance a little bit there. But, you know, anyhow, so we're looking at this, we're looking at that, and, you know, it's just not, it's not, razor left, that's it's just not, it's not what it should be. So, you know, again, this whole budget plan, there's a bunch of crap in it, none of which will benefit you or I, mind you. Be detrimental, but in the name of social justice. Oh my God, we don't have any more Trump tweets. This is just so nice. So nice. I don't know. I think I would rather. Well, you're never going to, even if Trump becomes president, you're not going to have Trump tweets. He ain't going to use Twitter again. And I'm pretty sure nobody's a member of True Social. So, yeah, I want to raise a toast to social justice. Social justice for the white heterosexual male. We're the victims of social justice as of late. And I'm going to bring that up right now, actually, after I take this shot of delicious Jonas Curse with some Pedialyte. Hangover Prevention 101. And I'm prepping my liver for Def Leppard. And then I'm gonna bring in what and how many times each term was mentioned. Coming right up. Oh no, I spilled Pedialyte on Rush Limbaugh. I guess that was a little too much. Anyhow, okay, so here we go. Yes, on the topic of social justice. Senator Cruz, Biden's budget full of leftist buzzword equity, climate, and transgender. So here we go. This was said Cruz on Hannity last night. He said, here's how many times the following words, and you know what? I can just play the soundbite if it'll show. If you can hear this, put up, type something in. If you can't hear it, if you can't hear Ted Cruz, type in the chat you can't hear. Make sure it's working. Okay, obviously we're having some technical difficulties here. So anyhow, Ted Cruz goes on to say, here's how many times the following word appears in the budget. Equity, 63 times. Climate, 148 times. Environmental justice, 25 times. Transgender, 8 times. Intersex, no idea what that is, 7 times. So things the American people care about, inflation, only 10 times. Fentanyl was mentioned only twice. Border security was only mentioned 8 times. Police was mentioned 4 times. Law enforcement, 9 times. Crime, 24 times. Gas prices, 3 times. That's what they care about. Now, I don't know, but I personally don't give a rat's ass. I mean, what the hell is intersex? Can anybody tell me what that is? I don't know. Maybe that's the I in LGBTQ plus I. And then there's an A. And pretty soon it's going to be the whole goddamn alphabet. Climate justice? And now you had Kamala Harris the other day. Oh, yes, cackling Kamala Harris talking about facing climate change, mental illness. They're afraid they're not going to be able to raise a family. Newsflash, folks. The climate is changing. It's always been changing. Where I'm sitting, a couple thousand years ago, I'd be needing a snorkel at best. You know what else, folks? The earth is bipolar. And the radical left, well, lobotomy would be an improvement. Anyhow, glad to be back. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you guys later. And as always, fuck Joe Biden!